everyone, welcome to my channel. I am Jaleesa. If you're new here, welcome. If you're not new, welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to be reviewing a very popular book, a book that you think of when you hear dark academia. I'm so excited to talk about this book because I didn't think I'd love it as much as I did, and I have a lot to say about it. Before I get into this book review, don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you have not already, and I will link all of my social media below, my Twitter and my Bookstagram account. Honestly, let's just get into the book review. I am reviewing Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. This book has been honestly super popular on BookTube, on book Twitter. Everyone's talking about Leigh Bardugo, how beautiful she writes, and this book is like the poster child for dark academia. Don't ask me why, because I don't even know. All I know about dark academia is that it's gothic literature, and gothic literature slash dark academia, it seeks to capture the eerie feel of the place, very mysterious, very atmospheric. That's what dark academia seems to be to me. And I think to most of you as well. Let's talk about first trigger warnings, because that's the most important part of this review. I want you guys to all go into this knowing what happens and things that may be triggering for you if you plan on reading this book, if you haven't already. And so in this book, trigger warnings really are sexual assault slash rape. You have underage drinking, underage drug use. You have drug use slash overdose. You even have body mutilation. And so I think that those are some very serious topics in this book. I do believe that if you cannot read content like this, that you should be very wary going into this book if you plan to read it. But if you can handle that kind of stuff, then go for it. But again, I think it was a solid depiction of a lot of what goes on, unfortunately, on a college campus, and so very realistic here. So what is this book even about? This book follows Galaxy, aka Alex Stern. Alex has the ability to see ghosts, which in this book they're called grays, and because she sees these ghosts and she hears them, she's trying to find ways all of her life to quiet these noises, quiet these ghosts. And so at a very young age, Alex found out that drugs actually quiet the voices. When she's using certain drugs, she doesn't see these ghosts anymore. She ends up falling into a life with these people who really aren't the best influence on her, and she has a best friend who actually ends up passing away in a very tragic accident. And so after that happens, Alex is approached by a man called Dean Sandow, and the dean, he works at Yale, and he comes to Alex with an offer that if she comes to Yale and she allows them to pretty much exploit her gifts, they will allow her to come to Yale without any academic background, because her grades were not stellar in high school. I don't even think she finished high school, and she's not a Yale person, and so she is getting kind of second chance at life. So it's either go to jail potentially, or fall into other things that she shouldn't be into, or go to Yale, use her gifts, and take this deal. And so she takes this deal, and she is immediately thrust into the secret societies, which specifically the House of Veils, which have 8 houses, and she's part of the 9th house technically, which oversees all of the houses in the Vale. And so she kind of becomes an apprentice to this guy, Darlington. His name is Daniel Arlington, but he goes by Darlington. And she works underneath him, and pretty much he's training her to become the new him. But in the midst of all of this, Alex soon finds out that the upper echelon staff and students, a part of these houses and these societies, are dabbling in very dark magic for even darker reasons. And this book quickly turned into a murder mystery slash missing person, and so Alex is at the root of all of this. She's at the heart of it, and she has to find out what happened with this murder mystery and the person that is now missing. I loved this book. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. First of all, the main character, Alex, is so lovable, and which is weird because she's not the most open character actually. As you get to learn about Alex, you can tell she's very closed off to people. Why I fell for her and loved her, I have no idea, but she was such a great protagonist. I've seen some people talk about her as being the girl who's like not like other girls, and she's dark and broody, and people don't like that about her. They think that it's too cliche. And here's my statement to that. I've seen many people who love dark and broody male characters, and they eat it up. They're just like swooning over them, they love them, and I get why, because I do the same thing. I much prefer a dark and broody character, a grumpy character, over a sunshine character. So I understand it, but I do think that it's totally appropriate for Alex to be that person, to be in that character. And so I didn't have a problem with it. I actually liked that she was dark and broody and her favorite color was black. Like, it worked for me, it worked for Alex, and I think that her character was written really well in that sense. I think that we should give her a pass. Like, I don't think that she should be so heavily critiqued for being not like other girls, or for being dark and broody, because that's who she is. I mean, she had a rough life, and she has a rough gift. Her gift is very different, and it's difficult to house, and so I think that her personality matches the weight of the gift that she has. So I had DNF'd it softly for a little bit, but then I picked it back up again, and I think I DNF'd it around page 120-ish or something like that. In the beginning, it can feel like you're just learning about the houses and their magic and the characters or whatever, and Alex's past, her past with grades growing up, what that was like for her as a kid, and it can seem a little boring if you're not into that, but I got into it pretty quick. And honestly, learning more about her past made me like her even more in the current part. So this is definitely a multiple timeline book. I've only read dual timeline stories. This has like 3, I think. You have the past, which is like Alex as a child growing up, and her pre-Yale. Then you have the current timeline. It is the winter time, and she is currently alone without Darlington. Like, she's at Yale without him. Then you have the past again, which is last fall, which is around the time where Darlington and her were meeting. They were getting to know each other, and he disappears. And so you have to follow these 3 timelines. And sometimes you'll be in a chapter where it'll say winter, but then you get a flashback to when she was a child or pre-Yale. I can see how some people would find that difficult to follow along with, but I honestly didn't think it was that difficult. I can only speak for myself, but I do feel like Leigh Bardugo did a great job of weaving these 3 timelines together without making it so confusing or, you know, mumbled together where it didn't make sense. She took a, you know, your usual murder mystery type of novel and story and turned it into this beautiful story about these houses that use magic to pretty much get an upper leg in life. It was brilliant. Like, can you not tell that I'm impressed? Because I'm very impressed with her work right now. This is my first Leigh Bardugo book. The way she overlapped the mundane part of life in Yale and college with, you know, secret societies and dark magic, it was great. I want to compare this book slightly to Catherine House, and here's why. I just recently read Catherine House, and one of the things that I loved about Catherine House was the setting and how atmospheric the read was. I felt like Elizabeth Thomas did a beautiful job of crafting her setting and making it feel like the reader was really there. She made the place itself be eerie and just mysterious and a little scary, like, you know. So I think Catherine House actually excelled in that area, whereas in Ninth House, I don't think the setting was like the star of the eerie feeling that you get when you read this book. I think that what made this book so vivid, and like the scenes and the interactions so vivid, with Alex, her character. We are looking at Yale and all these houses through Alex's point of view. It was dark, but what was darker was Alex and her gift. It wasn't so much the place or even the houses. I mean, yeah, we got descriptions of the houses, and the descriptions were beautiful, but it was Alex when she would experience, you know, interacting with the Greys in her life, talking to them, seeing them, inhabiting them. It was the ghosts in her life that she saw that, to me, made this book a dark academia book, made this book have that eerie feel, that mysterious feel, that atmospheric setting. It was her, not Yale, not the campus, not the houses. I think that was actually kind of a creative way to go about making this book very dark academia-esque. So I thought it was brilliant. There are a few things that I want to know about this book. Number one, as all of you should know by now, if you don't already, I am a huge romance person. I love romances in my fantasies. I don't really read a fantasy unless there's a romance in it, or at least some sort of romantic, you know, aspect in the book. But in Ninth House, there is not a single romance. There's not a single romance in this book. And so, as someone who only likes that kind of fantasy, I love this book, which should tell you that if you're a romance heavy reader, especially in fantasy, I think that you will still enjoy this book, because I did, and I really love romance and I don't like fantasies without it, but I love this book so much. Like, if you cannot tell, I was very just overwhelmed with happiness when I finished this book. It was just so great. But let's talk about a couple of things that are, one thing in particular, well, maybe a couple things that I feel like kind of threw me off a little bit. So the dialogue in this book was pretty good for the most part. There was just one character that I feel like I didn't understand, and that was Detective Turner. Detective Turner is a black detective, and which is cool, you know, a black character in a book, great. And there's not many main characters in the book, but he was one of them, and so I love that, I guess. But I felt something off with him. him and Alex had a very weird relationship. They were kind of like oil and water, but they moved from slowly being like enemies to, okay, I have to work with you, to I understand you. And I liked how their relationship kind of changed over time and how it grew and how they came to an understanding. Super cool, I appreciated that. However, there was a scene that happened in this book that caught me really off guard, and I was a little confused as to why Leigh Bardugo did it. I would love to know why. So the scene in the book was one of the characters, Dawes, she's another main character, she was sitting down and Detective Turner walks into the room with Alex, and he kind of spooks Dawes. She wasn't expecting to see them, and so she turns and looks at him, and he's like what? Like, I guess her face was kind of like, what, who is this? Like, what is he doing here? And she was a little afraid. And he was like, what, are you racist or something? And so Dawes was like, I'm not a racist. And then Alex goes, everyone's a little bit racist, Dawes. In my mind, I'm thinking, okay, take a step back. Why is this scene here? Like, what is the point of this scene? What is it telling me? And so, of course, as a reader, you interpret things how you internalize things. I internalized it one of three ways. One of the reasons why this could have been put in the book was to showcase that anybody can have a prejudice and not know they have it. That's a possibility. It can also be interpreted as people of color or black people thinking that everything has something to do with being racist or racism, and it's not. Which, if that's the case, I mean, interesting. I hope that's not what the point of that particular part of the dialogue was for. And then the last thing that I could think of, I can come up with, was that people are calling out, you know, someone's the prejudice or the racism, and, you know, people are quick to defend themselves and be defensive instead of opening their ears and listening to the person who's calling them out. And so it could be one of those three things, it could be none of those things. I could be totally wrong and off base here. I don't know. I just know that that scene left me feeling a little bit weird, and not mad or angry or whatever, just a little confused. I'm not really sure why that was necessary in the book, especially at that particular point in time. It just felt very thrown in the mix with no conversation before or after, so I don't know what the point of it was. Who knows? Anyone, if you know, let me know what you think. I don't know. But Detective Turner's character, I wanted to like him a lot, but his character felt very flat to me. And being that he was such a main character in this book, I don't feel like his character ever fit in the story. And it could be because maybe he had high moral ground and what they were doing was all, you know, immoral. And that could be why he stood out to me and why his character felt misplaced. But it just didn't feel authentic, I guess. And so, I mean, I don't know why that is, but that's just my own interpretation. Aside from that, every other character I did enjoy for the most part. Overall, a really great book. I can't complain about anything else, and I think that if you haven't read it yet, you definitely should. Now is a great time to read this book. It is December, and yes, I know it's supposed to be cheery and happy and, like, you know, holidays and all that good stuff, but this book is a really great mood setter, and it was just really well done. And so I'm happy I read it. I recommend it to everyone. Anyone who likes fantasy or anything that's like magical realism even, I think that you can enjoy this book. But overall, a great time, a great read. And that's it. That's all I have for you. So if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and I will see you all in my very next video.